Hello everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank Makran sir, seniors, and the training department for giving me this opportunity to deliberate upon the aspect on a particular service under the GST law in front of you all learned uh, officials of the executory body of the GST. I hope and wish you I hope and wish you and your team members and family are safe in this pandemic. Also, please note, I will be sharing this particular presentation to the training department for onward circulation to all of you post today's session. Also, I'll try to reserve the 10-15 minutes in the end for taking any questions on the topic. Thank you. As you all are aware, journey of GST began way back in 2000, where a committee was set up to draft a law which would replace multiple state and central taxes and levies such as VAT, service tax, excise, and etc. It took almost 17 years for GST to see the light of day. That means to get passed on both the houses of our parliament and finally get implemented on 1st of July 2017. Yesterday, we completed 4 years for this big implementation which has happened, and it's like a reform implementation, we can say. And it has been marked as a GST day, which coincidentally is also a CA day for us. So GST, as we all know, is a multi-stage indirect consumption-based tax system which has been implemented in India, and it is levied on supply of goods and or services. With this, I would like to start today's discussion. That is, the topic given to me was a particular service, which is legal and accounting services. So GST, whatever provisions which touch base with respect to this, I will be trying to cover in today's presentation. Jumping on the particular topic, let me even cover a couple of slides on the basics of GST. Now that we all know, GST is an indirect tax which has been implemented to avoid cascading effect, tax on tax. The intention of the government was to have one nation, one tax. Let us see what is the taxable event. Earlier in the prior to GST regime, there were multiple. There was sale for VAT, there was service provision for service tax, there was manufacturing for excise. So there were multiple levies and multiple different nature. Now in GST, what is important? The taxable event is now supply and or services. It's very simple, and the supply has been defined, which is an inclusive definition, and it's for goods and or services. What does supply includes? There are two parts to supplies. One, with a consideration. The consideration can either be in monetary terms or a non-monetary terms, such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, disposal, lease, rentals. This is where a consideration is given. Consideration and for barter is not like really in monetary consideration, but out here there may be two supplies to it. And there is another part is where there is a supply which is happening, or a transaction when we call it is happening without a consideration. Say branch transfers from Maharashtra to Gujarat, there is some goods moving out. Out here, it is not, there will be no consideration which will be exchanged. However, it is considered as a deemed supply, and all these transactions are listed in Schedule 1 for us. Now, let us move to the types of supply. So there are various types of supplies. So major for us is supply of goods and supply of services. However, supply of goods is further bifurcated as goods transferred as goods or goods transferred as services. So when there is a transfer of ownership or title, that means you are parting rights with ownership of the particular commodity. In that case, it will be considered as supply of goods. When you're not parting rights or you're not transferring the title or the ownership, it would be termed as supply of services. Just to give a very basic example would be that we walking in any shop and purchasing a mobile phone. Out here, the ownership of the mobile phone is transferred to us. So that means it'll be considered as a supply of goods in that particular case. For example, for the second one, say suppose I am starting my own consultancy practice and I need some IT equipments. Rather than doing a capital investment at the start, I would think that let me take these equipments on rent or lease.
आवाज गेला मला, परत करू का? नाही, आधी तुम्ही त्याच्यात ठेवा मला.
पूर्ण गेलाय.
हा 2 मिनिटं थांबा जरा, त्यांना
बोला.
फोन करतो.
2 मिनिटं थांबा म्हणतो, त्यांना फोन गेला.
Hello. Sorry everyone, I actually ended up getting dropped due to some internet connectivity. I hope I'm audible now. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, sir.
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So all of this is given in Schedule 2, which is say what is classification, bifurcation between goods and services. So, and as I said, that it is irrelevant for us to determine whether it is a supply of goods or services, because the provisions such as time of supply, place of supply will be differently applicable for case of goods or services. Moving on, whatever exports outside India or supplies to SEZ, this will be treated as a zero rated supply. And whenever there are supply of commodity on the service together in either a naturally bundled manner or in an artificial bundled manner, or two goods or two services or any combination of them, if it is done together, it will be either treated either as a composite supply or a mixed supply. Now that we've seen what is included, what are the types of supply, let us see what is excluded, which is outside the purview of GST. So alcoholic liquor, petrol, diesel, natural gas, this has been kept outside the purview of GST. However, it has been got under the ambit of the law. However, the date would be notified at a later point in time. In fact, yesterday, the Union Minister, Nitin Gadkari ji, had mentioned that they are intending to get petrol, diesel also under the GST. So definitely it will be there in the discussions around and of the GST Council in the going forward meetings. I'm not seeing that in the near future happening, but definitely that's the way where we need to go. Then there are certain items which is there was certain transactions which is covered in Schedule 3, which are say sale of land or building, services by any court or tribunal, services by an employee to his employer under the employment. These are transactions which are considered neither as a supply of services or nor a supply of goods. So basically there will be no GST on these things. Now that we've seen what is taxable under the GST, let us see who is liable to make the payment. So ordinarily it's the supplier who is liable to make payment, which would be considered as a forward charge basis. And in some exceptional cases, it is the recipient who ends up paying the GST, which is nothing but termed as reverse charge. Out here, I'll be using a small diagram for which I'm denoting three different lines. Say the straight line is denoting the supply, either of goods and or services. The dotted line is a consideration, and the orange line, which is the dash and dot, is a GST portion. So there are two parties to it for any transaction, say a supplier and a recipient. A supplier is supplying some kind of goods or services where the recipient will end up paying a consideration for it. Out here, in ordinarily, it's the supplier who ends up paying the GST. So say suppose if I'm supplying a goods worth ₹100, I will be collecting, suppose the rate is 18%, I will be collecting 118 from the recipient, and 18 whatever I would have collected, I'll straight away go and make payment to the government or exchequer. In exceptional situation where same supplier is supplying services or goods, consideration, in this case, it will not be the supplier, but the recipient. So my invoice in this particular case will not be of 118, it will be of for 100. And there will be a note mentioned that the tax on this particular transaction needs to be borne by the recipient under reverse charge basis. In this particular case, then the recipient, after making the payment during the particular monthly return cycle, he ends up making this particular payment with the exchequer. So what are the few categories? Few categories I've just illustrated, which is import of services, GTA services, sponsorship services, director services, and the one which is relevant for today, our topic, is services by an advocate, senior advocate, and firm of advocates. And there is other further other entries as well. So I will be dealing in this particular entry in a couple of slides from here. So for me, today's topic, which is legal and accounting services. So it falls under the HSN code 9982, which is taxed at 18%. There is no conditions attached to it. So this is coming from the notification number 11, which is a rate notification given for services. And there is when I said that there are no conditions, because there are certain entries, say for a restaurant, the entries would read 5% rate, and condition is that they are not eligible for claiming any ITC benefit. For us, this particular rate doesn't have any conditions, straight away the rate is 18%. Let us see that now that we've seen the taxability of the legal and accounting services, let us see if there are any exemptions given to the legal and accounting services. So yes, there is an exemption entry number 45 given for the legal services, and it reads as under. So services provided by. Then there are three parts to it. For us in today's topic, which is relevant, is the part B, part C. So I'll be taking part B first. Services provided by firm of advocates or an advocate other than senior advocate, because that is getting covered in part C, by way of legal services to. And then now there are four different types of persons covered here. to either an advocate or a firm of advocates who are into the providing the same legal services, or to any person other than a business entity or a business entity which is not registered, for which the aggregate turnover is under the prescribed limit, and to a government agency or government entity. So central government, state government, local authority. So when this legal services is provided by these type of people, that is an advocate or a firm of advocates, it will be considered as an exempt. And for similarly, for a senior advocate also, any senior advocate providing this services by way of legal services, same way to a person other than a business entity which is not registered, and to a government category. Now we will be wondering, what are these terms? Because there are certain terms which is being used out here, say business entity, advocate, senior advocates. Let us understand the meaning for each of them. So the said notification, so this is the notification number 12. Same notification, there are certain relevant definitions and notes which are explanatory notes which are given in this in the said notification in paragraph 2 and paragraph 3 of this in the end. So let us see the business entity. So business entity means any person carrying out business. It's a very wide definition. In fact, the word business itself, which is defined in the GST law, as we know that it is again a very, it first is an inclusive definition, which says any trade, commerce, activity, profession. So it becomes wide at that point in time. Further, it even says no matter the frequency, no matter the volume. So even if one transaction, it would be considered as a business. So that's any entity, any person carrying out a business is referred as business entity. Legal services. When we say that it is said by way of legal services, so for us, it is important to understand what does legal services mean. It is nothing but an advice, a consultancy, or any assistance in any branch of law in any manner, maybe a verbal or a written or anything, and includes representational services before any court, tribunal, or any authority. So it's a very specific and very concise meaning which has been given to the term legal services. Advocate and senior advocate. So first we'll go for advocate. The meaning has been assigned similar, which has been given to in the Advocates Act 1961. It is nothing but advocate means who have been entered in the Bar Council as and given a role under the provision. So role, what we would understand is there would be a number assigned to them, like a membership number, which is similar in the Chartered Accountancy fraternity. Membership number is assigned. So same way there would be a role. So they will be considered as an advocate. So there is a difference between advocate and lawyers. Lawyers can provide legal services. Advocates, whereas can provide legal services also registered under Bar Council of India. Senior advocate. Senior advocate, again, the meaning has been assigned, which is there in the Advocates Act 1961. They are nothing but the advocate who are designated as a senior advocate if Supreme Court is of the opinion that by virtue of his ability or him standing at the bar or his special knowledge or experience in law and he deserves such distinction to be given to him, then he would be termed as a senior advocate. And last, as we saw that it is a form of advocates or an individual practicing as an advocate, the exemption is given. However, LLP, which is now a renowned form of existence for any entities to operate in India, which also will be considered as a partnership firm or a firm. So basically even LLP is getting covered there. Now that we've seen the taxability, which is at 18% for our services, we've seen certain exemptions which are there. And we discussed earlier that there was an reverse charge entry, so advocate services and all. So let us now deep dive in the relevant notification pertaining to reverse charge entry. So which is in notification number 13, the entry number is 2. It reads services provided by an individual advocate, including a senior advocate. Out here, it is very nicely that they've just combined it. They don't have a separate entry for a senior advocate or a firm of advocates by way of legal services, directly or indirectly. And in the explanation, the legal services, which we already discussed in the earlier slide, the same meaning has been given out here as well. So a supplier of service can either be one of the three, either an advocate, either the firm of advocates, or senior advocate. And the recipient needs to be any business entity located in the taxable territory. That means anyone who's doing business located in the taxable territory, that means in India. Earlier, this definition read completely different. There was a very long entry which was given out here, and so which was services supplied by an individual advocate, including a senior advocate, by way of representational services before any court, tribunal, or authority, directly or indirectly, to any business entity located in the taxable territory, including where the contract for provision of such service has been entered through another advocate or a firm of advocates, or by a firm of advocates by way of legal services to a business entity. So this, as you saw, the simple entry which has been now there was earlier reading in this particular manner. It was leading to a lot of confusion. The reason why I'm taking it is because there was a ruling for this particular entry, and there was a lot of misunderstanding. And then finally, the government put rest to all these confusion by issuing a circular. So the confusion was nothing but whether only the representational services are getting covered under the whether only the representational services are getting covered for the reverse charge benefit, or it is all the legal services provided by advocate, senior advocate is getting covered under the reverse charge entry. So there was a case of J.K. Mittal and Company versus Union of India. This was in fact the first law, like in fact it was, as you can see the date, 12th of July 2017. This was one of the first case to go in the high courts and courts for giving a ruling under the GST law. So the Delhi High Court held the following. So there was, as of date, there was no clarity on whether all services or only the representational services are governed by the RCB provisions. Then it further said that if, in fact, all the legal services are to be governed by RCB, then there is no purpose for these practitioners or law firms to get registered compulsorily under the GST law. So in the erstwhile regime, they had to obtain registration. And as we know that once 1st July came, the transitional, all the existing registrations were transferred or migrated under the GST law. So they had to continue with their registration. But suppose if their services were completely under RCM, so this notification number 5 was issued, giving a exemption for not obtaining registrations. And in this case, the Delhi High Court directed that no coercive action should be taken against any lawyer, law firm for any non-compliant with any legal requirement under the GST law until and unless a clarification is being issued. This was in July 2017 itself. And finally, in January 18, this was put to rest, saying that it was, so there was an FAQ also which was issued, which said that whether only legal services or representational services are getting covered under RCB. So yes, the legal services would be provided by an individual advocate or a senior advocate to a business entity are liable for GST under the RCB provisions. Now that we've seen what is liable under the GST, the rate relevant for us, who to pay, let us understand when to pay. That is the time of supply, which has been given in section 13 of the CGST Act. So I've bifurcated into two parts. First, we'll talk about the so FCB is denoting forward charge basis, RCB is denoting reverse charge basis. So in case of forward charge basis, the time of supply shall be earliest of the following dates. Now, suppose if I issue a time invoice within the time period, that means prescribed time which is given is 30 days under the law, or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. However, if suppose my invoice is not issued within the stipulated prescribed time, then it would be date of provision of services, or again the date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. Say suppose an advance is made payment. So in that case, advance would be considered over the provision of services because payment is prior to that. If any of these provision doesn't really apply, then it would be determined as the date on which the recipient shows the receipt of services in his books of account. This is in the case of forward charge basis. Moving to the reverse charge basis, again, it is the earliest of the following dates. Out here, we, as in a person who's a consumer, ends up paying this particular tax to the government. So it would be the date of payment vis-a-vis either entered in his books of account or the date on which the payment is debited in the bank account. Suppose he has written a check today and maybe it has been presented, given to the client a day after. So the debit will happen maybe subsequently once the vendor really goes ahead and deposits that particular check with his bank. However, maybe in his books of accounts, the date is today's. And again, so whichever is earlier. Or the date immediately following the 60 days from the date of issue of invoice. In this case, they've given this particular thing. So basically the 61st day will become from the date of invoice will become the next date. And last, in case any of the above two provision doesn't really apply, then will be the date of entry in the books of account for the recipient of supply. Coming to the next aspect under the GST, which is where should I pay this tax or which tax to be paid? So that is nothing but will help me determine using the place of supply, which is given in the IGST law, section 12 and 13. Section 10 and 11 also talks about place of supply, but that is concerning supply of goods. Since I'm restricting our topic today to services, I'll only be dealing with section 12 and section 13 of the IGST Act. In case where the supplier and recipient both are in India, so therefore I will first rely on the section 12. For us, which is a legal and accounting services, there is no specific entry in that particular section. So we will fall under the clause 12(2), which is the residuary category or a general category, whatever we call it as. Now, suppose if our services is made to a registered person, then it shall be the location of the recipient. If it is made to a person other than registered person, it shall be either the location of the recipient if we have the address. If we do not have the address, then it would be the location of supplier itself. So this is the section 12. Section 13 is where we need to see when one of the party is either outside India, say either a supplier or a recipient is outside India. In this case, it's a residuary entry which sees services supplied. Then the place of supply shall be the location of recipient. In case we do not have the recipient's address or location, then it would be the supplier's location. So why is place of supply important? As under the GST law, we need to determine whether it be an intrastate transaction or an interstate transaction. There are two factors to it. One is the supplier's location and the place of supply. So if, say, suppose a place of supply and the supplier's location are in the same state, it would be considered as an intrastate transaction. And suppose if either of them are in a different state or a union territory, it would be considered as an interstate transaction. So which GST is to be levied? Say in intrastate transactions. In this particular case, I've just given two examples. Sorry. Say a person in Madhya Pradesh is supplying services to another person in Madhya Pradesh, or a person in Maharashtra is supplying services to a person again in Maharashtra. In this particular case, the taxes levied would be CGST and SGST of respective states, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. When we are coming and discussing about the interstate transaction, out here, a person in Maharashtra is providing some services to Madhya Pradesh, or we can even take the reverse case. In this particular case, it will be the IGST which needs to be levied, and the place of supply in this particular case would be Madhya Pradesh, since the recipient is in Madhya Pradesh. So whether it is registered, then again it will be the registration address. If it is not, since we know that that person is in Madhya Pradesh, so there is an address which is there on our records. So that therefore also it comes down to IGST of Madhya Pradesh. With this, let us now deep dive. We've spoken about what is taxable, when is it taxable, where it is taxable, who would be liable. Let us now go in further details of the classification. So the classification is given to us in the annexure to the notification number 11, which is the rate notification. And for us, the relevant topic is heading number 9982. So the column, so these are the same table, just due to the size, I have just put it in, broken it into, put in the next to it. The first column is nothing but the chapter, section, heading, or a group. The next is the service code, which is a 6-digit HSN code, or we call it as an SAC, which is a service accounting code. Then is the description of services. Out here, the why 6 digits are really relevant is since 1st April 2021, it has been made mandatory for us to put in so all the people, all the registered taxpayer or the taxpayer as we call it, whose previous year's turnover was more than 5 crores. For them, it has been mandatory that they need to specify 6-digit HSN on their invoice, similarly to their returns and etc. Same, and persons under 5 crores, it would be the 4-digit level. So 99821 is the legal services. 99822 is the accounting, auditing and bookkeeping services. 99823 is a tax consultancy and preparation services. 99824 is the insolvency and receivership services. So this is at the 5-digit. Now moving ahead to the 6th digit, as you can see, say 8211 and 8212. So I will be calling it as now 212, 211, 213 and all. So 211 and 212 talks about the advisory and representational services. However, the laws are different. The first concerns the criminal law. The second concerns any law other than criminal law. Then 213, 214, again, it is documentation and certification services. However, the first one talks about laws pertaining to IPR, say copyright, patent, and 214 is talking about anything other than any documents other than IPR. 215 is arbitration and conciliation services. 216 is nothing but a residuary category in the legal services. So we all know that there is a sundry residence, the general residuary category for all the services as well in 999. However, in each of the category also towards the end, they have said others, which is not classified anywhere else. We'll need to come in here. So any legal services, this will be the specific entry we need to stick to rather than the general entry. Then in coming to accounting and auditing services, the first 221 talks about the auditing, 222 talks about the accounting and bookkeeping, 223 talks about payroll. Again, there is a residuary entry out here as well. Then consultancy and preparation services talks about for corporate and individual, they're 231, 232, and insolvency and receivership services, 241. Say, for example, suppose a person who's documenting a particular business contract. Ideally, they need to mention 998214 on their invoice. However, for some reason, he just ends up putting either 998211 or 8216. Is that an issue? In my view, considering the rate for entire heading 9982 is at 18% and there is no leakage of tax, what I believe is that particular, if there is a wrong service code mentioned, it is not that material. However, in future, say government comes out with a different rate for legal services under 99821 with 99822, or within the legal services, say 211 has a different because it is concerning criminal law, you need to give a bit lower rate, maybe concerning any other law. A higher rate can be kind of justified. If the rates changes, then yes, one needs to be very careful while classifying and determining as to which heading exactly it will be falling into. Now, just by looking at this annexure, one will really wonder or think that what all services are really getting covered under each of these service codes. Are there any document or are there any information available for us to see what it really covers under each of this particular entry? So yes, government has also issued explanatory notes to this particular scheme of classification. And so first, since the first heading for us is legal services, we will be dealing explanatory notes pertaining to legal services. So I'll be now again addressing the last 3 digits, which is 211. 211 talks about 211 and 212 talks about advisory representational services. However, 211 considers is concerning the criminal law. Say there is a criminal investigation going on, an advocate who's appearing for his client based on some criminal act, then it would be falling under 211. Then 212 is concerning any other law, that is say civil law, constitutional law, international law, military law, or any other law. So what is typically covered? So I've just kind of tried to generalize that what really it should cover is that appeals, representation, litigation matter, or even opinion services concerning any other law such as income tax, VAT, GST, NCLT, service tax, excise, customs, profession tax. Say today there was some service tax notice or a VAT matter which is going on, for which say either a CA or advocate is appearing before the tribunal or an authority. In that point in time, it will really fall under 212. Then talking about 213 and 214 together, first 213 talks about documentation and certification services concerning IPRs, which is patents, copyrights, and any other IPRs. They've kept it like that. So drafting those kind of agreements or something like if you say you are giving your patent or copyright to someone else to use. So any agreements drafted would be falling under 213. Then 214 talks about other documents such as wills, marriage contracts, commercial contracts, business charters, MOAs, AOAs. Moving further can be say transfer pricing certificate can fall in here, MAT reports can fall in here, ROC certificates can get covered in this particular case. Then 215 talks about arbitration and conciliation services. This is nothing but the person who's acting as a mediator or an arbitrator, as we commonly know, which is there. There is always a clause in any of the business agreement which talks about arbitration, because they need not all the matters needs to get dragged to the court. Thereby there is a body which is arbitration who really kind of takes care and understand between the two who's faulty or whose mistake it was or something like that, and they will act as a mediating person between the supplier and the recipient and try to settle the case. So this particular case falls in here. Out here, if you'll particularly see that it starts with the service code includes, and then in the bracket it says that but shall not include representational services on behalf of one of the parties in the dispute, because that is covered in the earlier chapter, which was 998212, which will fall in this particular case because representational particularly comes here. So this is nothing but say specific prevail over the general. And then there is the sundry category, which is 998216. So if not classified in any of the 5 above entries, then it should be falling under the 216 heading. So these are the explanatory notes, which is further detailing what these entries are. I may be rushing on these particular slides. The reason being this entire material I will be also forwarding, so it will be really coming to you, and at any leisure point in time further, you may deep dive and read it yourself. Talking about the explanatory notes pertaining to accounting services. Out here, the first one is again the last 3 digits, 221. It talks about the auditing services. And here also you will see the same differentiation is there. Service code includes and service code does not include. So includes is nothing but examination of accounting records, other supporting evidence, needs to be fairly and accurate at a given date and all. So this typically means say a statutory audit or a tax audit or even internal audit, GST audit, stock audit. All of these will get covered here. What it does not include is accounting review services, which falls in the just the below entry. management audit, which is pertaining to say management of the company and all. So there is a separate heading for management related services, which is 9983. Accounting and bookkeeping services, which is 222. Again, this service code includes annual and interim financial statements. Out here only reviewing, not preparation or not audit. So it is, as you will see, the scope of review is less than that of an audit, and the level of assurance provided is thus lower. Again, it is nothing but you do not, again, it says that the preparation of returns is not there, which is a separate entry. However, you are basically just collating the information, compilation of the information and all. So this typically would be a day-to-day data entries, accounting, bookkeeping services, which even would include CMS reporting, which needs to be done. Moving ahead would be the 223, which is payroll services. Again, anything to do with employees, say HRs in any of the organization really take care of the employees, say what would be the pay structure, everything would be defined, say by the finance team, but it will be the HR who would be kind of mediating. If there is any kind of issue with the salary, maybe salary is not on time, there is some leaves or something like that. So those kind of questions typically we go and ask to the HR of the organization. So any payroll processing, HR advisory, or HR manual and system designing services will really fall under this particular service code. Again, there is a sundry entry out here, which typically will include any non-statutory certification services, a transactional audit, a particular transaction you want to audit, maybe general retainership services which one needs to give, fixed assets inspection if someone wants to give. 1 minute. Stock inspection visits, verification, system reviews will be getting covered in this particular heading. Now that we've spoken about legal and accounting, let us move to the third ambit, which is the consultancy and preparation services. So explanatory notes pertaining to this. As we spoke that this is divided into two parts. The 231 talks about the corporate, 232 talks about the individual, but both are concerning same. Say you are preparing the returns, so ITR services, GST return services, TDS return services, or any remittance forms, say 15 CACB, or any ROC returns for corporate, and advisory services for either of the categories. So, and it shall also include any certification with this respect. So all of this particular nature of services do fall in this particular case. Bankruptcy, out here it is the insolvency and the receivership services. So so we hear that some companies under IBC proceedings, or as at the NCLT where there is an IBC proceedings going on. So people who are there to assist those creditors or the particular entire IBC process with the NCLT. So this particular service comes in here. So a person who specializes into IBC practice will need to specify this particular service code, which is 998241 on their particular invoice. So it's simple that it reads that includes providing advice, operational assistance to the management and or creditors of the insolvent business, and or acting as a receiver or a trustee in the bankruptcy procedure. Till now, we've seen the major part, which is say what is taxable, where is it taxable, when it is taxable, who will be liable to make the payment. Now the last ambit, which is very important and critical, is the valuation. Until and unless you really value, you would not really know on what amount you need to really charge the GST rate. So the valuation under GST is given under section 15 of the CGST Act. On what value you need to charge? So people will say that it's the transaction value you need to charge, but really transaction value, can you rely? Yes, you can rely, provided the transaction is between two unrelated people and the price is a sole consideration. When we say unrelated, is because when there are say related persons, so there are different rules governing it. If say suppose the supplier and recipient, despite being related, there is no really benefit or anything, any sort of advantage given. Say the price is kept same when they are charging to other people or something like that. So that would be an open market value, and so then it should be fine. But there are separate rules governing to these kind of cases. For us, say value of supply is the transaction value. Are there any inclusions? Yes. There are several inclusions. However, the one which is relevant to our discussion today is the incidental expenses which are charged by the supplier in respect of supply of services. So when we say incidental expenditure, say suppose I am a chartered accountant and one of the client I'm providing say consultancy services. I'll be charging an X amount, say 1 lakh rupees is my fees. Now, when I'm charging this 1 lakh rupees and undertaking this particular assignment, I end up taking prints, using out some stationery of my office. Also, I will be say there is some conveyance happening. Say I'm traveling to his office, client's office, or maybe if there is a departmental work, I will end up going to the department. So there is conveyance. So basically, what I will do is I will end up recovering these stationery, which is a nominal amount, but still recovering these stationery expense or maybe conveyance from the from my client. So say suppose my fees, which is 1 lakh rupees, my stationery cost is rupees 1000, my conveyance is 2000, and this basically on my invoice, it would be showing as 1 lakh as my consultancy charges. OP, normally we refer it as OP, which is an out of pocket expense, which is 1000 and 2000 for stationery and conveyance. If the client requires the breakup, I will be happy to provide with that. And it will be 3000. So my total invoice will value, the transaction value in this particular case will become 1,03,000, and 18%, as we all know, that's the rate which is levied, will be on the transaction value. So in this particular case, it will be 18% on 1,03,000. When we say that it is transaction value, in this particular case, this is again crucial that the nature of supply for me is a composite supply. Why? The principal supply is the accounting and the legal services. I need not charge a separate rate for the conveyance which I'm recovering or for the stationery which I'm recovering, because that is ancillary to the principal supply for me, which is accounting services. Now that we've seen that what is inclusions, what is it covered under the transaction value, are there any items which is not getting covered under the transaction value? Say normally we talk about say discounts, yes, but that is morely pertaining to goods, but not for services. Legal or accounting, you cannot really use the word discounting because there is no fixed price. Say I have two clients, one client I'm charging for the similar service say 1 lakh rupees, another client I'm charging maybe 75,000 or 1,25,000. It really makes a lot of difference because you cannot really see that the nature of services is exact similar or not. So there is an exclusions which are given. So any expenditure or any cost which is incurred by the supplier as a pure agent of the recipient. So the provisions pertaining to pure agents are given in Rule 33 of the CGST Act, CGST rules. So for example, let me take say some taxes, tax paid or for or on behalf of the client, or any travel ticket or hotel expenditure incurred for or on behalf of the client. Let's continue the same example which we were discussing earlier, say 1 lakh and 3,000 and all. Say there is some tax worth rupees 18,000 which the client has to make payment, but for some reason his bank is either not not the nationalized bank, so he cannot use this particular bank for making payment. He always used his one of the team member who has ended up making payment on behalf of the company. Now that team member either has resigned or maybe on a leave. So he ends up asking me that can you deposit this particular tax of 18,000 on my behalf? And I'll be like, yeah, sure, I can do it. So yes, this taxes I will be making payment. I'll be then recovering it separately. So my invoice, which would be of 1,03,000 as OP, total is 1,03,000. GST will be on 1,03,000. There will be a separate entry out here, reimbursement of taxes paid on behalf of you, 18,000, which will not really form part, and I can get these reimbursed to me and without being part of my income, because generally I ended up paying 18,000 on my client's behalf, which he is recouping it to me. So that technically it's not an expenditure for me, nor a revenue item for me. So what are the conditions? How will you really bifurcate between these, whether it is an inclusion, whether it's an incidental expenditure you are incurring, or an exclusion, which you need not consider in your income? Say conditions for pure agents. So there are several conditions. I've just listed down in a very small sentences. So say pure agent makes a payment to a third party on behalf of the recipient for procuring a supply. Then the recipient of supply is only the user of the services procured by a pure agent. So I am making a payment of tax for the client. The client is the recipient, not me. Recipient of the supply is liable to make payment to the third party. So in this case, it is the client who is liable to make that payment of 18,000 of tax. Recipient of the supply authorizes the pure agent to make payment on his behalf. The recipient is authorizing me, please go ahead and make this payment on my behalf. The authorization can either be verbal or maybe over an email or an agreement or anything. But there has to be some kind of nexus that I'm making payment. I can't just say that, okay, I'm making the payment, I'm recovering it also. He's like, I never told you to do so. So it has to be an instruction which needs to come from the recipient. Recipient of the supply knows that the services for which the payment has been made are provided by a third party. So if I'm making payment to the government, it's the recipient knows that it is eventually going to the third party. Payment made by the pure agent on behalf of the recipient of supply has been separately indicated in the invoice itself. So yes, I did say that my invoice will really call it as 1 lakh rupees, 3,000, which is an incidental expenditure. The tax will be on 1,03,000, and 18,000, which I'm recovering it, is separately mentioned, and the terms is reimbursement of the tax paid. Pure agent recovers actually the same amount which I have made payment. I cannot recover either 18,500 rupees or even 1 rupee extra or 1 rupee less. I need to recover exact 18,000 which I have made payment. And the services procured by the pure agent are in addition to the main supply. So yes, my consultancy services are there, which is my main supply. I am just incidentally even helping him make this particular payment. So that's take care of all these conditions. So with this, if you fulfill any of all these conditions, then you can say that it is an excluded, you're doing it on behalf of, and that particular value will not be added to your transaction value, and you can really exclude that particular amount. So what I've done is I've just listed down certain question and answers myself. Try to think on the basic questions and kept the answers very simple. So are advocates different from lawyers? We did discuss that lawyers are nothing but a law graduates, but unlike advocates, lawyers are not registered with the Bar Council of India. When we discussed that once you are registered with the Bar Council, you would be given a role. Once you're given the role, you from a lawyer will be termed as an advocate, and you can even appear and stand in front of the courts. So lawyers technically can give you a legal advice, but are not eligible to stand in the court of law on behalf of their clients. Why this is important is the reverse charge benefit which is given only to 3 class of people. One is advocate, firm of advocates, or senior advocates. It is the word used out there is not lawyers, because we do fall, say lawyers are giving legal advices, so they will be under the heading 998211. However, but they will not be getting covered under the reverse charge basis. So they will be liable to tax, and they need to obtain registrations and comply with the law. Is advocate required to obtain a registration? Again, we've already discussed this. say suppose if if an advocate who's providing legal services to his clients in India, so that is business entities in the taxable territory. So your entire turnover is getting taxed under the reverse charge basis. So there was a notification number 5 which was issued by the government exempting the requirement to obtain registration for these kind of categories. However, we need to pause here. We need to go back and think that suppose if say a legal an advocate who's providing some services over and above other than legal services, then what will happen in that case? So in that case, yes, if they are providing any other taxable income or taxable supply, and certainly we need to see the aggregate turnover. If that breaches the prescribed limit, then they are required to obtain the registration under the GST law. What would be the GST implication on advocate providing legal services to a client outside India? When we were discussing the reverse charge provisions, I did say that the recipient needs to be the business entity in the taxable territory. Taxable territory is nothing but the boundary of India. So in this particular case, when we say that a client is outside India, they would not really fall under the category of recipient which is mentioned there, that is the business entity in the taxable territory. So therefore, this particular case, it will not be getting covered under the RCB notification and it would be liable to tax. However, since the client is outside India, say the place of supply when we discussed is nothing but the recipient which is outside India. So I have the location, say suppose I am an advocate, or let's just say a person A who's an advocate providing some legal services to a person X in United States of America. So in that particular case, what will happen is your place of supply is USA, which is outside India. Again, supplier is in India. You will be getting paid under the foreign currency. So once you are fulfilling all the conditions for export and not related and all, so in this case, it will be considered as an export of services. Export of services, again, is an interstate transaction. So once you are dealing into an interstate transaction, it becomes mandatory or compulsory for a person to obtain registration, which is there as per Section 24 of the CGST Act, which says that if you are fulfilling, if you are providing any interstate transactions or interstate supplies, or whether your supplies are liable under RCB, then you need to obtain registration mandatorily. Further, also when we say zero rated, the zero rated provision benefit is given in the IGST law, which is Section 16 of IGST. Out there, it is said that the IGST, the registered person undertaking zero rated supplies, which are as under, which is export of goods and services or supplies to SEZ unit or a developer. So again, the word used out there is registered. So person who ends up providing any legal services to a client outside India will end up taking the registration. However, again, considering this particular transaction is a zero rated, then they can even obtain LUT and need not charge the GST on their outward supply. What would be the GST implication on an advocate providing services other than legal services, which we just spoke? So yes, in this case, immediately we will think that they are required to obtain registration if they are breaching the aggregate turnover limit. Yes, they are liable to GST in the hands of an advocate under SAB, under the forward charge. Let us think what would be the example for this kind of services. Immediately which comes in my mind is say a person A who is an advocate also owns a particular commercial premise, which they've given it on rent. Suppose his legal services turnover is exceeding say more than 50 lakh rupees per annum. And his commercial place, no matter it is small, even if he earns 1,000 rupees a month, which ends up only at 12,000 mere amount, but still considering he's breaching the aggregate turnover, because even the 50 lakhs, which is the legal services will be considered for the calculation purposes of aggregate turnover. So your aggregate turnover is breaching the prescribed limit of 20 lakhs, and then yes, you need to obtain registration. And for those 12,000, he will be liable to GST in the hands of an advocate. Advocate avail ITC. ITC cannot be availed in case his entire output is of legal services and is provided to his clients in India, and for which the GST is being paid by the clients under RCB basis. So simple, if you as an individual is not making payment of GST, whatever procurements you would have done in which there is GST embedded, say you are maybe providing your services from a rented place, you're using rented equipments, IT equipments, you have purchased some stationaries. So all of this GST is nothing but a cost for an advocate, and you cannot really claim ITC. However, having said so, say suppose if you are if you're doing exports, or you're doing just the above question, when they are providing services other than legal services, and he's liable to GST under the forward charge basis. Now let us just break this particular into numbers. Say my legal services provided to the clients in India is 60% of my turnover. Remaining 20% turnover is provided outside India. And then there is another 20% turnover on which I am actually providing other services, which is concerning say renting of my commercial place. In this particular case, I need to segregate my inputs, my input services, my capital goods into these three parts. So whatever is pertaining to say, so I will be running this particular all my input tax credit, I'll be bifurcating into three buckets. 60% not eligible, 20% I can go ahead and claim refund because I'm exporting, 20% I can use for making payment of my GST under the forward charge basis. What would be the GST implications on a chartered accountant providing legal services? So when a CA is providing legal services, I am definitely getting covered under the by way of legal services. So yes, I'm getting that particular box or tick. However, the supplier is defined and which are only the three categories, as you all know now, which is advocate, firm of advocates, and senior advocates. So chartered accountant is nowhere covered out there. So the reverse charge basis does not really apply to a CA, and even if they are providing legal services or an accounting services, it will always still be liable to GST under forward charge basis. Can a CA avail ITC? If a CA is providing taxable services, there is no reverse charge applicable on P accountants, then there is no stoppage for us for availing ITC. Yes, we need to fulfill the other prescribed conditions, say make payment within 180 days, we would have received the invoice, and eligibility of the ITC provisions. What would happen to a CA supplying services to an advocate? Any thoughts? So just say CA supplying services, when we say that our services supplied by CA to would be taxed at a forward charge basis. So yes, my invoice of say consultancy fees even for an advocate would continue. I'm assisting in filing say his IT returns. Now when I'm filing his IT returns, I am providing professional services. I will end up making issuing an invoice with GST. So that is nothing but cost in the hands of an advocate, because simply which we've already discussed that ITC cannot be availed by an advocate. No matter, now we need to see that his outward turnover comprises of what all. So that will really help us further see that whether he's eligible for part of the ITC or completely no ITC. What would happen to an advocate supplying legal services to a chartered accountant? Say suppose there is a civil case on a chartered accountant or something like that, for which they end up taking on advocate services, or maybe some legal documentation, you want a lawyer to help you draft an agreement. In this particular case, what will happen is it's a legal services. Advocate is supplying services. Again, CA at that point in time, we are the recipient. Would fall under this particular entry of business entity in the taxable territory. So the GST needs to be paid by CA under the reverse charge basis, and the said GST paid will be available as input tax credit in the hands of a chartered accountant. What would happen to an advocate supplying legal services to an individual? So individual, I'm using the word individual is that it denotes any person other than the business entity. Yes, we immediately think of that exemption entry, which we discussed earlier. Advocate supplying legal services to an individual or any person other than, it is exempt under the GST law. An example which comes in my mind is, say, suppose an individual, an aged person, say an elderly person, his neighbor is a legal lawyer or an advocate. Let me use the word advocate and not lawyer. He's an advocate. He ends up going and asking him that, can you help me draft a will for me? So the advocate will provide his legal services. He will help him draft the particular will. And in this case, the services which is supplied by an advocate is nothing but the legal services to an aged person. Yes, it is exempt under the GST law. With this, I've come to a near end to my presentation. I've tried to cover, in my view, I've tried to cover all the aspects pertaining to this topic. However, yesterday, since we completed 4 years, let me even take say 10-15 minutes more on the some statistics which I feel are relevant under the GST law. So these statistics is the source is the GSTN portal itself, and it is as on the 27th of June 2021. So in fact, as you can see, the registrations are standing at 1.28 crores, which is actually doubled in the last 4 years from 66 lakhs. The returns which have been filed is 68 crores. The number of e-way bills which have been issued is 195 crores. The invoices which have been uploaded is 1,275 crores. The payment which is done through the portal, which does not include the IGST, which is done on the IceGate when you are filing bill of entry, that it does not include. That is almost 35 lakh crores. Number of payment transactions are almost 19 crores payment transactions. And the highest return transactions in a day is 24 lakhs. And highest return transactions were 24 lakhs, and highest payment transactions are almost 9.5 lakhs. So this really sees that despite a new law, yes, there have been struggles in the start. We did overcome all of that. It was a new law. It is not an easy law, but definitely the system, the entire the kind of the platform which was offered to us, say by the government, is been very nice and smoothly working going forward. It in fact has given us a lot of data points, lot of resources. Now we're giving HSN at a 6-digit level. All of this is nothing but a data points which will help really government understand and see the need if any rates needs to be brought down or if any rates needs to be changed. In fact, for the past 8 months now in a row, the revenue of the GST collections is over 1 lakh crores. Now we say that it is actually a pandemic situation, but however, it has been a new normal of we working from home. I'm sure it has been a challengeful situation for all of us. There are certain industries which have been badly affected. There are certain industries which are thriving in this particular case, such as say IT, because earlier prior to this COVID, no one even thought if any person or an individual says that I'll be working from home, immediately his senior would be like, yaar ke kya hi kaam kar lega. See, that's the mindset which typically we all have. It's not an easy thing, but now, in fact, anyone saying that I'll be working from home and people do really appreciate and support that, you end up saving so much of time. There is no travel, there is no additional expenditure. All you need is just good connectivity of internet at your home and a laptop or a computer or whatever desktop you need, and you just need to connect through your system. And with these additional, say, software such as Microsoft Teams or Zoom, what it really helps is that we can actually just see through each other. We can do a video call, we can just chat through. It is so seamless. You can share files. So it really helps us going in the future. Also, there is now talks of, say, currently the rate structures is 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%, and this also the 3% and all. However, the major portion for our rate, the revenue of this, when we say the GST revenue, which is over 1 lakh crores, the major items, 87% of the items are only in the three brackets, which is 5%, 12% and 18%. So almost 22% of the items are at 5%. Almost 18% of the items are there at the 12%. The major chunk, which is 47% of the items, are taxed currently at 18%. So why this is important? It's not about it's not just a number, but this kind of data which is available with the government, they are really thinking through in future that do we really need all these three rates? Say the revenue neutral rate, which is there currently only, I guess yesterday or day before, RBI did say that the revenue neutral rate for GST currently is 11.6%. So considering this kind of things, there is a chance that in the near future we end up seeing these three rates getting combined to only two, at least the 18 and the 12% coming together. In this particular case, there will be certain items which will be taxed either at a higher rate or a lower rate. So this is something which I just thought of sharing. Also, let us see what is the way forward. Where is it that we are actually going with this? So Digital India. So it's in fact been 6 years of Digital India, where we are really proud the way we've seen the country grow. When we say Digital India, the first thing really comes in mind is just the recent pandemic situation and the two particular portals which have been generated, developed by our country, which is Arogya Setu app and CoWIN. The way these apps have worked, yes, there are mixed views, but I feel these apps have really eased. You can just say that, okay, in fact, when I had got COVID, I had got a test done. The next very day, before getting a test report, my Arogya Setu asked me three simple questions. Are you tested positive with COVID? I said, because I didn't have a report, I said no. Then it says that, however, the ICMR records in this number has been tested positive. Have you given your number? I said yes. So they're like, until and unless you get the report and we get clarification, we are turning it into red. So imagine it's something so very fast. With the CoWIN app, you can actually register for vaccination online. You could even get a slot. You could even, in fact, get the certificate. In a lot of countries outside India, after getting vaccinated, they were issued chits. So like where we are seeing a country, it's Digital India completely. That's the kind of future where we are going ahead. In fact, the IT portal now recently last month has got completely revamped and a new portal has been come in. So yes, there is a challenge. I'm not saying it's going to be easy considering the population which we are carrying. It's almost 135, 136 crores. So there will be a lot of breakdown in the system, but that is definitely where we all are working through. You all are seamlessly working, giving in your time to ensure all these portals are working seamlessly. Artificial intelligence. So when we say artificial intelligence, so it's completely the amount of data which we have. And in fact, the Prime Minister keeps on talking about the artificial intelligence. So it's about understanding what all data points we do have, trying to see how you can actually make use of it, how you can justify that you're charging, say, an X amount. Is it right? Or do we need to rethink on maybe the rate? Do we need to lower the rate? Do we need to higher the rate? Do we need to give any benefit to them? In this particular COVID, we've been given two relief packages which have been issued by the government. So that's how this artificial intelligence will really be of great help to us. Automated returns. There is auto flow of information all the way now. In fact, with e-invoice becoming mandatory for almost people whose turnover is anywhere more than 50 crores. So imagine the data flow which is happening. Earlier, people used to carry a manual invoice if their goods are moving out. They also had to separately go on the e-way bill portal, issue an e-way bill. Now with this automated flow of information, you just need to generate an invoice. All the information relevant for goods will really pass through the e-way bill. All you need to go and just put in the part B details, which is the driver details, and your e-way bill is there. Same way the information will pass through the returns. In fact, the IT return now would be so simplified and so automated that earlier you has to fill in information using, say, Form 16, 26 years as a base. Now, in fact, you can see that you just need to do yes, no. There'll be some questions which would be asked, and all you need to do is just accept it, and your returns will be pre-filled. Integration with the income tax and the customs. So, in fact, it has always been. In fact, in the prior to GST regime, you used to receive notices that please reconcile your turnover which you're reporting in service tax vis-a-vis the income tax. So we used to actually end up doing the 26 years reconciliation, trying to match it with your service tax returns. So then you need to say that, okay, this income really includes other incomes which are not liable to service tax. There are some portion of income which is pertaining to goods, therefore service tax was not there. Now, in fact, all of this will really come to an end. Why? Because all those GST return information will go through 26 years as well. There is a seamless talking between the IceGate portal and the GSTN portal. Whatever imports data we used to import in India, say filing bill of entry, paying customs duty, which also included IGST portion. Earlier, these informations were not getting covered in our two-way reports. Going forwards, all these information are coming in. So there is a seamless flow of data between the income tax portal, the GST portal, customs portal, and giving a lot of ease to the assessee. Purchase reports provided based on the vendor filings. Yes, the law was gotten using the three returns, GSTR 1, 2, and 3. That was the vision of the government. However, because of the huge data points and a lot of things that 2 and 3 never saw the never saw the light. But having said so, now we are going to in that direction where the 2A reports will be given, the 2B reports would be given, which will nothing but comprise of the information of the vendor filings. So completely, can we say that, can we just rely on this? But definitely this is a point where we can bank on. We can definitely identify who our vendors who are filing the returns on time. If there are any vendors who are not filing it on time, despite us making payment, do we really need to rethink whether do we need to do business with them, or maybe ask them to expedite your return those goods, or maybe return the payments, or end up please filing your returns or getting certifications. So purchase reports based on the vendor filings is available. Fraud detection. In fact, commendable work has been done by the central and state to track down the fraudulent cases. So again, we come back to artificial intelligence, all these automated systems, which really helps to detect any of the fraud, say fake invoices. Invoices are issued without actual supply. So those kind of cases, there was like seamless. There were so many notices, so many inquiries, searches. I'm sure a lot of you would be part of those searches also and ended up discovering such fraud cases. So with all these automation, that's the next step where we are going through. Faceless assessment and appeals. Again, in the income tax era, it's already now there that the faceless assessment, in fact, the next steps, which in my view will be that the faceless appeals also In fact, in the GST portion, GST, the registrations is always been faceless. Yes, there is a visit which now sometimes is required by the officers. So over there also it is the registration number is given. Then if required, the visit is happening sometimes, or sometimes it is not happening. Returns, earlier the returns used to be manually filed, manually signed. All of those is not required. You can simply do it via EVC. In fact, in this lockdown situation, for companies and LLPs also, they've removed the requirement for digital signatures, and EVCs is nothing but an OTP which is generated on the mobile number of the authorized person. So that is also a good enough tool to justify that the return is proper, authenticated and filed by the authorized person of that particular company or an LLP. Even audit, earlier VAT audit reports used to be manually submitted. Now those things are again done online. Same way, the near future, we are going to see that all these things is the thing which will really end up saving a lot of cost, a lot of infrastructure costs, no rentals, your storage cost, your travel time would be saved. If you've seen hearings of courts, even tribunals, even appeals, lot of discussions happening over a Zoom call, over a Teams call. So in fact, this is the future which we are seeing out here. With this, I've actually come to an end. I may have now, I'm sure it's very soon, but I've tried to cover. I hope I was not very fast. Thank you all for patiently listening to me. I once again express my sincere gratitude to Makran sir, seniors and the training department for giving me this opportunity to deep dive on the subject and present before you all learned officials. Now I leave the floor open for any questions on the topic.
कोणाची काही प्रश्न असतील तर कृपया विचारा.
Hello. हाँ sir.
Hello.
Hello.
At the outset, I will thank you that the lecture was very nice, covering all the aspects, place of supply, time of supply, and other things. Everything was covered. Almost everything was covered. So don't have much of questions. All the question answers were almost covered in this. But one basic question I'm just asking. You had last slide, I think you had taken business entity, where an agent person, if it is given the service by the advocate is given to the agent person. So my question is, if instead of the agent person, if the person is a star person, like say Salman Khan or any star person, so we can go to the definition and see nicely. But because you are here, I'll just ask you if you can tell. And certain few examples, if you can tell us for the business entity, like this reverse charge and for this.
Okay. So let me just put down the question which you kind of addressed, which is pertaining to say a services, any legal services provided by an advocate to say an actor. Now, in this particular case, it depends on what exactly is the nature of services which legal services is given to an actor. If it is not related to his business, say a will, it's a personal service given to say, let's take Salman Khan only in this example. Say a will which has been drafted for Salman Khan, and it would be nothing but a personal service. I don't feel it is relevant to his business. And say, suppose now there are two aspects to here. Suppose if he's taking this will also, say drafting of will, whatever legal fees he would have paid as an expenditure in his income tax, he's treating this as a business expenditure, then I feel it will be relevant. Then we need to see the nexus. So when we are able to draw that this is nothing but in relation to his business of him acting, then yes, it would be an expenditure which will not be considered as an exempt entry, but it will be liable to GST under the reverse charge basis. But say suppose I am a chartered accountant providing or maybe any person say X who is providing, who's into any other business. Now, if he ends up maybe procuring any legal services for his will or maybe some divorce for filing a divorce petition, in this case, there is nothing to do with his business. If there is no nexus, if he is not going to claim it as an business expenditure, then in my view, I would really say that this will really getting covered as other than business entity because he's nowhere related to this particular business. So those kind of services would be exempt.
So in short, it will be the expenditure is reflected.
Yes, so we need to see the nexus for this particular expenditure.
Yeah, thank you.
There are a few questions out here. Do the registration of 3B non-filer of 3B. So, yes, this particular case, there was the guidelines of Delhi High Court, and in fact, even it had gone to the Supreme Court where it was said that no coercive action should be taken. Say, suppose if an advocate who's only and only providing legal services and no other services, yes, he required to obtain registration. He need not. He can go ahead and suo motu cancel it. So yes, there can be a view taken that we can cancel the registration and cancel the notice as well, since all of his supplies are, if they are done to a business entity on which the GST will already be borne by the recipient. They would have been made payment and they need not continue with those.
अडवाणी सर, दिप्ते सर, काही प्रश्न आहेत का? कन्क्लूड करायचं, काही प्रश्न आहेत कोणाला काही अजून? Okay, sir. It seems nobody has any questions. And
sure.
You'll be sharing with the PPT, no?
Yes. I will be just emailing in some time to you. And yes. Also, in case anyone has any question, I have also jotted down my mobile number and even the email ID. So if anyone has any question, you can even write it to me, or I will try and see if I'm able to maybe help you with any of the answer or something like that.
ओके. आणि विनंती आहे पार्टिसिपंट्सना की ज्यांना पीपीटी हवे असेल त्यांनी कृपया चॅट बॉक्स मध्ये आपला मेल टाईप करून टाका, म्हणजे त्याप्रमाणे प्रशिक्षण विभागातर्फे जी आता रौनक सरांना पीपीटी मिळेल मी मेल करेन. रौनक सर, थँक्स लॉट फॉर अ व्हेरी युजफुल सेशन. थँक्यू लॉट थँक्यू व्हेरी मच.
थँक्यू सर. येस,
सेशन संपलंय असं जाहीर करतो.
थँक्यू.
हाँ बोलिए।
सारा यूटिलिटी अपने को
आ गया है, ठीक।
लेके आया।
हाँ बेटी है, और अभी आज टाइम नहीं, आज सिर्फ सबमिशन कीजिए, बाद में चेक करेंगे।
कोई बात
आज भी उसी में बहुत कोई बात। सबने ऑनलाइन किया है ना?
सबने होता है। तो ये लिस्ट सर आपने 5,000 से नीचे का जो है ना, वो मैंने फॉलो नहीं किया। उसके ऊपर का जो है, वो सारा बता रहा है। उसमें सर मेरे को ये पता ना था। जैसे ये फॉर्म 4 जो है, ये हम लोगों ने ऑलरेडी इम्यूनिटी स्कीम में पेमेंट किया था 92,000। तो उसमें ना ये पार्टियां हैं, तो सर उसमें कर लेंगे या यहीं पे, मतलब कैसे करेंगे सर, कैसे मालूम पड़ेगा?
अभी मैं खोल भी नहीं सकता, मैं आप वही बोल रहा, आपसे सबमिशन करके जाइए, बाद में कुछ डिस्कस करना करेंगे, तो जरा भी टाइम नहीं रहेगा।
तो क्या करूँ मैं इसका? अगर इसका जेरॉक्स मिल जाता तो मैं इसके साथ अटैच करके आपको दे दूँगा।
कैसा जरा चाहिए?
ये करेंगे।
जरा
यहाँ जेरॉक्स नहीं है।
आप भी स्कैन करके भेज दीजिए चाहिए तो।
ये मैं सर आपको दे देता हूँ।
ठीक है,
अभी वो मनीष जी भी 10 मिनट पहुंचेंगे।
ओके, ये उनको भी बोल दीजिए आज जरा भी टाइम दिए।